So I'm sneaking around a bit outside because tomorrow is actually Mother's Day in France and Dora is here. So I made her a little bouquet and I'm hiding it outside until the morning. I'm hoping it still looks okay come morning so that she won't see it until then. Bonsoir!
Bonsoir!
Yeah, as I mentioned, Dora, Scott's mom, is here with us.
My man!
Along with Tom, his dad, his sister Ashley, and his niece Micah. And where are we going?
We're going to Normandy! Well,
Yeah.
the D-Day beaches.
Yes, we are going to the D-Day sort of memorial celebrations, a lot of the historic sites. I'm very excited because I have never been.
It's one place, one of several places I wanted to take Brittany for a very, very long time. It's a place that's very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, and since it's going to be D-Day this week, we figured it was a perfect time. Go see all the sites, see all the events that they're going to be having this week. So that is where we are headed. So the first place we visited on day one of our trip was Camp Geronimo at Sainte-Mère-Église. And it is a reenactment campsite. I'm pretty sure a lot of these reenactors are actually camping out there 24/7, which is pretty cool. It was also really interesting to see how many reenactors were from so many different nationalities. Most reenactors there seemed to be doing impressions of US soldiers, but many of them were actually French or German, and probably even others that we didn't meet. But that was just really interesting and not something I expected. Another thing we did not expect was to be interviewed and to appear on national television. Scott and I, as well as his sister Ashley, were all interviewed and did end up on TV, but we were not able to download the video to show you. If you are at all a fan of Band of Brothers, you'll know that Sainte-Mère-Église was a key site for the 101st Airborne, so I absolutely recommend visiting. There's so much to do and see. Obviously Camp Geronimo, which we're showing here, but also the town square and the church. And if you know your World War II paratrooper history, you may remember that Sainte-Mère-Église, the church specifically, is where Private John Steele accidentally landed on the pinnacle of the church and was stuck hanging there for a few hours before he got captured by the Germans. So you can still see an effigy of him hanging right there at the very top of the church.
This is also where we saw some reenactors of the 101st Airborne Easy Company. There's a French resistance chaplain. We caught a flyover of some C-130J Super Hercules. And then shortly after, there was some French Alpha jets doing another flyover.
We also got interviewed again, this time by France 3. On the second day, we got to visit Utah Beach, which was every bit as windy and cold as it looks. But it was a very moving ceremony, and I'm very glad we got to attend. We got to meet up with some friends there in the reenactment community, and we even met the veteran who was the speaker of the day, who had landed on Utah Beach 2 days after D-Day as a reinforcement and had been captured by the Germans during the war. Mr. Carver McGriff is 98 years old and had traveled all the way from Indiana to take part in the ceremony. And we were really lucky to actually get to meet him at the home of Mr. Vincent Aurier, who is a friend of ours in the reenactment community. And we got to stay at Vincent's home at his gîte. So that was a really cool experience. Also getting to meet Mr. McGriff there. So thank you so much, Vincent.
Following the ceremony at Utah Beach, we went to Pointe du Hoc. It was cold and windy, which it has always been cold and windy every time I've been to Pointe du Hoc or Normandy. So I can only imagine what it was like when all the soldiers fought through the area. For those who don't know, Pointe du Hoc is where the 2nd Rangers, or Rutter's Rangers, scaled the cliffs to seize an emplacement of German guns, but the guns were not there when they got to the tops of the cliffs. they had been moved inland into an orchard, and the Rangers had found wooden poles set in their place, and the Rangers had to hold off for 2 whole days of combat. And I believe it was 225 Rangers who attacked Pointe du Hoc, and I believe only around 90 or so were combat effective at the end of the 2 days. They had to fight tooth and nail to get up the cliffs, and then fight tooth and nail to hold the positions. The significance of Pointe du Hoc is that it's set between Utah and Omaha Beach, and the command thought that this position with the gun emplacement would severely impact the landings of the beaches, so the Rangers were tasked with scaling the cliffs and taking the guns. If you go to Pointe du Hoc, you'll see how extensive the German bunker system was, and just the sheer amount of craters from all the shelling and bombs landing in that area.
And at the end of day 2, we went to the Normandy American Cemetery, which is where many of the U.S. military service members who died in this area at D-Day and other battles are buried. It is a very beautiful, very somber location, and I highly recommend you visit if you can make it to Normandy. On the last day, Scott and I returned to Sainte-Mère-Église for something Scott has been wanting to see for many years, the Airborne Museum, which is right in town near the church, and it is amazing.
On display in Building 1 was a Waco glider that you can actually walk through a portion of.
It's really interesting to see what brands are still around today, like Libby's Orange Juice, or there were Kellogg's Rice Krispies, Coca-Cola. Check it out. The heat powder, formerly known as Mexican.
Upon entering Building 2, you're greeted by a C-47 Dakota, as well as several awesome displays showcasing the various iterations of the U.S. paratrooper uniforms used throughout the war. There was also a pretty cool display set in the floor that showed the parachute harness, as well as the full length of the line in the parachute canopy. Here's a few of the dummies that were also dropped in to help confuse the German forces. Also in Building 2, there's a few interactive displays, such as this one that simulates a parachute drop. The countdown already started, so please disregard the unorthodox harness setup.
Go. What is that? Oh, wow. Oh, jeez. Bravo! Congratulations.
Now it's time to get to work. The museum also has a really cool projection briefing that detailed the missions for the Airborne, codenamed Albany and Boston.
28 Screaming Eagles of the 101st Airborne will be dropped on 3 drop zones, coded A, C, and D. Officers of the 101st, I require your full attention, since this will be your baptism of fire.
And finally, to wrap up the day, we went to the Asval Battery because there was supposed to be a paratrooper drop that day, but it did not happen due to the windy weather. Thankfully, we at least got to enjoy some reenactors and some vintage vehicles before heading home for the end of the trip. So all in all, I completely recommend a trip to Normandy if you are here in France, especially if you are a history lover. There are so many incredible sites, absolutely worth taking the time to check it out for at least a few days, if not more.
And now it's time to storm the beaches.